Hi, everyone. I'm starting the recording. Today is the July 21st version of the behavioral model meeting. And unless anyone had something high priority to discuss, I thought today maybe we could go through the items here in the list that are blocked or waiting for a resource to see how maybe we could make progress on these. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think we have list of pull requests pending that I would rather review.
Okay. Do you want to present, Marian, or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, I can do it too.
Okay, I'll stop.
Second. So we have 1, 2, 3 pull requests from Mukesh, Vijay. See. Yeah, for now that's it. Let's stick to those 3. So I have reviewed this one. There is my approval. We discussed it last time. Mukesh presented it. It's direct, VNet direct and drop actions for a routing table. So from my point of view, everything was fixed. There is there are those 3 new actions done separately, all the infrastructure in place. Is Mukesh on the call, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here.
So what about the duplicate attribute? Was that fixed as well?
Yeah, that is fixed.
Mm-hmm.
I'll raise one more follow-up here for the comments in the SAI API, the generated headers, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there is an at condition and those kind of things where we have to just say both conditions, both actions have to be can be allowed for this parameter, right? So those kind of things I have to fix yet. But in terms of the SAI API header generation itself, it compiles and it's fine now.
Yeah, okay, so I will, by the way, there is a parallel work that needs to be done, so I will be doing it today. Based on those pull requests, I will regenerate SAI APIs and submit pull requests to SAI repository. But to finish on this one, it has my approval, so everyone else, please take a look. I will give it another day to provide comments. So yeah, if there are any change requests, please submit. This one looks good to me. I'm willing to merge it. So that's number 1.
So Marian, did you say
yeah.
should I generate the SAI API and raise a PR in the OCP repo?
Oh, probably I'll do it myself. After we will have this merged, I will generate SAI API myself.
Okay.
Marianne, I might be missing something, but what needs to be submitted to the SAI repo that's not auto-generated, like within our Dash pipeline?
No, that's actually what needs to be done. The auto-generated API needs to be submitted.
Oh, you want to actually put that in the official repo?
It is on the Dash branch. It already is there. You'll go to GitHub or CP SAI. There is branch Dash, which has APIs over here aligned with the latest master on the Dash repo. Like, oh, here they are.
So what's the purpose of submitting these to SAI if they're still sort of in development and they might get some churn? Is there any benefit to putting them into SAI at this point?
Yeah, because there is Sonic work going on. So I understand there are changes. So that's one thing that I'm trying to keep to the minimum, changes to the existing APIs, but what we have already is being used in Sonic. It is integrated into a Sonic branch in Redis. It will be used by OrcAgent. OrcAgent work starts, I don't know, it's Microsoft who's doing that, but it's supposed to start this week, next week. So we have all the infrastructure in place.
So if this were suddenly in the Psi repo, let's say, you know, tomorrow, which I know won't be, how are we going to integrate that into the Dash pipeline build system? Because right now that's generating these and sort of appending them or inserting them into the files. What's your feeling that? How do we reconcile those two sources of truth?
Well, this is, let's say, a snapshot. The behavioral model will always have the latest one. If any changes would be done, we need to take all the behavioral model tests needs to be done based on the latest auto-generated, because we are doing change to the behavioral model first, and we get the APIs, we run the tests. Here it is a little bit, maybe a little bit behind. I try to keep them up to date. Yeah.
Okay.
So
that makes
we're
sense.
not. Yeah. So this one is there's still one source of truth. This one may be just a little bit behind in time. That's it.
Okay. Do we want to, when we submit things here, I think it would be good to put in the pull request, like the commit level of the Dash repo that those came from. So you can always backtrack and know exactly what its origin was.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that to reference one from another, and GitHub displays all of that. Let me see. Commits, let's go to the commits.
Because you're kind of manually copying it, right? So there's no like automatic repo linkage. You have to put a comment or something.
Yeah, so let's see, commits. The last change that was done and submitted to the behavioral model was remove inbound VM table. I don't remember which one is referencing which one, but you're right, it's a good thing to do. Probably that's something that we will need to have like best practices on as well. Let's see, maybe it's here.
Can we add like a label or something and reference that in the OCP report?
Yeah, also true. Okay, it's not this one, maybe it's this one. Also, then I guess I forgot to do it as well. So probably, yeah, we need to come up with some way to reference those two, because they are, one is result of another. The OCP Psi pull request is the result of this one. They're not referenced in any way.
Even just a comment for now, you know, that has the commit of the Dash repo would be minimum, and you could always regenerate everything. We don't want to lose historical, you know, bookmarks, so to speak.
Yeah.
Someday it'll catch up to us when we have to like go backwards and find out where something went wrong.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Right. So probably we'll start with this one. Sorry, not this one. Where was that? Let me go back to. So we'll start this process, I guess, with this pull request to keep track of them. I'll put the references in both. Then, okay, there is another pull request, fix duplicate appends. Is Vijay on the call? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, hey, so this was the build issue that we were seeing because some of the Psi attributes from the P4 are getting appended multiple times. Basically, when you run make Psi, all of the attributes and object ID and so on in the header files was getting appended every time you run make Psi. So if you run make Psi like 5 times, there would be repeated 5 times, and that would lead to a compilation failure. So I guess we were not seeing this earlier because when you do make all, the first time VNet out builds, and let's say you're starting on a clean repo, then you're only generating it one time and the C compiler doesn't complain. But there's a particular sequence where if you do make psi, let's say 2 times and then try to do make VNet out, then the compilation was failing.
Oh, so it appends duplicate. Let me see. You mean that what files are affected?
This is the auto-generated files, the psi
Psi
experimental
extensions.
Yeah. There are, I think, 3 or 4 files which get affected.
Yeah,
Pretty much the same fix. Yeah.
All the extension files. I mean,
Psi
another
type.
fix is just
Yeah, well, I can comment on that. This is actually really good change and forward-looking because what you may have noticed is that the current structure is the following. We have master branch inside repo that doesn't have dash APIs, and we have dash branch inside repo that has right now dash APIs. So every time we do header auto generation, we clone master branch, which means that we have a clean psi and then I append everything. And if you'd do this trick, as you mentioned, more than one time, you'd get duplicates. The plan for Sonic integration is that we will merge dash APIs. I believe it will be more or less stabilized after we have the VNet routing and ACL changes merged. We will have the dash branch merged into master branch. So we end up with the situation where at the point that you clone psi repo, you already get previous version of dash APIs. So we don't really want to do the let's say the flow will change from appending new APIs to actually doing a modification where you already have those object types and you might need to clean them up beforehand. You might need to let's say remove the duplicates that this pull request is doing. So this is partial work.
Can I say something on this?
Which, one second, one last sentence, which we will take, but I think it will have to be completed with more logic to actually be able to regenerate dash APIs based on the already existing dash APIs. So we don't leave some non-existing APIs that were present in the previous behavioral model.
Right. So I guess some P4 change, like removing a table, then you
want to go
and like, okay, got it.
Yeah, but we can merge this already. The further changes will be done, I guess, on demand. If we will run into that issue, we will fix that.
We can do one better if you want. Now we can merge this as is, but we could also do a trial run of what you're talking about, because right now in the current dash, it's importing psi as a submodule, and in fact, the current dash repo is not using the psi main branch. It's using my dev branch because of all the fixes for the psi thrift generation. So we can import any branch of psi we want into this and try this. So we could try your psi dash branch as a trial balloon.
That's
if
also
we want.
possible.
Or we could accept this because it's an improvement and then change it as we need to. But if someone wanted to go to that even more forward-looking scenario, we could actually try that on a trial basis, just see if it blows up.
Yeah.
What are people's preference? Do you want to do this as is? Because as a workaround right now, you can just do make psi clean psi, and it will not have the repeated headers. It's just a workflow command. So we can do it any way we want. Did you understand what I was saying, VJ, about how we can use a different psi branch to test this out?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking maybe we take this in as is and then do incremental changes on top. Whatever enhancements, I'm sure like more enhancements would be required to this generator, right, going forward.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I liked your solution. I was going to do a kludgier one that just did a clean in the make file. But, this is more elegant, and like Marian says, it's looking forward.
Yeah, okay, so everyone else, please review this one. Again, probably like in a day it will be merged if you have any comments.
Sure.
All right.
Thanks.
Yeah, sorry. And this one. There is a problem with this pull request. I haven't gotten to it yet, like to the full review. The problem is that I have a very similar pull request, and let me explain why we need it. So previously we had a behavioral model of ACLs that was simply like we define stages and we put ENI as a key in the ACL, which in terms of like static configuration will work. The problem is changes to the configuration, because ACLs are really a security table, security group that needs to be bound to ENI and unbound atomically, which neither the P4 runtime nor the SCI APIs allow to do in a way that the behavioral model is defined today. So instead of having, let me show that. So this is Mukesh did exactly what I have in my pull request. However, I still haven't compared them. But if we go to the, let me just jump to -ACL. So if we go here, you see that instead of having this match on ENI, which requires us to, in case of any configuration updates, to do the updates to rules one by one, what we have instead is the ACL group ID, which we can populate rules ahead of time, and then with a single action of appending a new group ID as a parameter of VNI, like here set ENI attributes, just set a different ACL group ID, we can switch atomically from one group to another group of the ACLs. So we won't end up in a situation where one packet matches on a bunch of rules from previous table and then on a bunch of rules from the new table, because we are still update is still in progress. So this change allows for the atomic switch of the ACL groups. This is why we need it. So as a side effect, it will change SCI APIs, which I wouldn't want to do, but this is a very good reason to do that. So that's why I guess we both decided to do this change. The only comment I have, like right off the top, is that I saw there are other changes. So Mukesh, if you can comment on them as well. Why do we have changes in the test and in the SCI API, SCI implementation generation? So what we're doing there?
You can go. So I was also like trying to make a test for this, right? Just populating the active tables and so on. So while I was doing that, I found some other issues. So tried to fix them as well. So here, what I've done is, so when I tried to test it, what I found was that the P4 was complaining. Basically, for SCI objects SAI APIs of type object of the type where it returns an object ID. So the implementation currently doesn't populate the table key, the P4 table key. So basically what we are saying is the P4 table key is also the object ID, right? The SAI object ID. So the SAI object ID is just a incrementing number that we are returning from the implementation today in the generated code, right? But it never goes into the P4 itself. So so this change is to generate that ID and also push it to the P4 as a table key. So that's what this is. Basically, it just adds that generated number as a key into the P4, without which the test was failing. So that's what this change is. Yeah.
So can we split this into two pull requests? First one is the behavioral model and all necessary to generate SAI APIs, and second is test and SAI implementation. Can we do that? Because it's a lot of things to review. Maybe we could do it faster having those two pull requests. Like if we have the behavioral model and SAI API, I can then again generate SAI API changes, move it to the SAI repo and have that ready for integration, and then we can follow up on the tests and all the rest afterwards.
Okay. So yeah, my thinking was that with the test, then it's also validated, right? Whatever is in the P4, and just validate the entire end-to-end. But yeah,
well,
we just.
Yeah, I understand your point, but we didn't have test before, so it's not like anything will be broken.
Okay. Yeah,
right
I
now,
can try to look it.
Yeah, right now the criteria is a correct API, and the test it's a great bonus, but we can have it done separately.
Sure. Yeah.
So Marian, going forward, do we want to break up all the PRs in the future also, just SAI API plus P4 changes, and then anything related to test separate PR?
Oh, I think it's hard to answer. You know, if there is some substantial change in the behavior that really affects tests, especially tests that we might have in the future, and you cannot change one without changing the other, then I believe it will go as one pull request. But here my point is that we didn't have a test, so let's keep it as small as possible.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, it's interesting timing because I'm also working on the code generator and the VNet out CPP, and just started finding some issues which I was going to file and do some fixes for. So yeah, if we separate out some of the infra stuff from the code changes, it might be a good thing. Also,
Okay.
I did merge the pull request last night, and so you'll want to sync to that.
Yeah.
And
so there was one other thing. Yeah.
You can also, I restructured the dash pipeline tests a little bit so that you can add more directories with more source files, and we'll find them all. So like if you were to look under dash pipeline tests, the structure is a little different now. You can add like another separate test case, and don't have to mix it in the existing file if you want. And the make file will just find them through wildcards and just add the tests.
Sure. Yeah.
And if this is unclear, feel free to contact me offline too. But definitely want to sync your repo because it did some things last night. But we're all heading in the same direction. It's good.
Yeah. So I'll just split this into just the P4 changes, and then the infra part I'll keep separate. So one other thing I did here
I
was
think P4 and API. P4 and API, if anything is needed in the API generation.
Yeah. So one other thing I did here is to change the match type to optional. I don't know if you can go back. So
What is
that
it?
allowed the in the dash active P4. Yeah.
So what does
So
it
one
mean?
thing. So one thing this allows us to it will treat the table as a ternary table, right? And then in terms of generation, this generates that psi ACL priority attribute.
Priority. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I agree.
Yeah, which was missing. And
Mhm.
another thing is making it optional means that while we are testing, also we can like leave out certain parameters. I mean, now we are required to mandatorily pass every single match key here, which is not the case with the regular ACL. So until we get the range and the range list and all that, that optional would be a better match.
Right. It's the same thing as with list that we really want to achieve at the end, which may be empty, which is the same meaning as optional.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
Okay. And as a follow-up to this, another thing I wanted to do, this was more from the implementation side. So we just have one psi API, right, to populate the ACL group, whereas we have 5 stages in P4. So I was wondering how the actual population is going to happen. Right, it is not going to populate all the 5 stage tables.
Yeah, but that for that reason, you need to have, when the psi API is generated, there should be an attribute pointing to a group. So every rule belongs to a group.
Yeah, so the problem is it's not just the group, because the in the P4 it's also there is also a stage, right? So it's actually 5 different. So the way now it will look is each P4 table is a collection of ACL groups, right? Not just one ACL group. It will be more than one ACL group. So one P4 table equal to multiple ACL groups, and there are 5 such P4 tables. So now the question is, which ACL group will go into which P4 table? Right? Because we have 5 stages, and each ACL group belongs in one of those stages.
Right. Okay. I'll need to look at it offline. I guess I solved for it in my patch. Yeah, probably I'll just compare what I did in mine to yours, and I can leave a comment how.
So this has nothing to do with the psi API itself. The psi API is fine. So
Yeah, in the
previously there
behavioral
was
model.
a stage. Correct. Yeah. So the stage ID was there previously. So this used to identify which table, which P4 table it went to. But I don't think this is the correct thing to do in the psi API. Right? The psi API should not have a stage for the ACL itself.
Yeah,
It
not
should only
anymore.
have a group. Right.
So
So
I
one
believe
solution I was
removed.
thinking.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So one solution I was thinking was to just for the behavioral model. So this is just a reference implementation, right? This is not the actual thing. So one solution I was thinking was to copy the same content onto all 5 tables. Right. So that way, anyway, it's going to be looked up based on the group. So the auto generation will still work. We just copy the same content onto all tables, and the way we copy it is determined based on what is the name tag given to the table. So if the psi name tag given to the table is the same, then from that psi API implementation, we copy it onto all the tables, all the P4 tables associated with that one psi API.
Yeah, you are right. But this is the control plane issue or psi implementation issue.
It's
what
only
really
the psi implementation.
Yeah, I agree with you. So what needs to happen is that this is actually defined in the P4 spec, is that when you apply the same table more than once, it really generates, the compiler generates multiple instances of those tables, and this is responsibility of a control plane to populate them all at once. So this is what psi implementation needs to do. I agree with that.
Yeah. So yeah, I can made that change as well in the SI implementation for the
Mhm.
SI implementation generation as a follow-up to this.
Yeah, sure.
So why do we call these, this is Gerald, why are we calling these ACLs as opposed to rules? Because rules are defined differently than ACLs.
You're probably right. We're talking about, so this is the ACL table, but when you, but API is per one entry. So that's really, when you call the API, you create one rule, you don't create a table.
Yeah, you create a rule which is very like lists of things, and it's not a firewall filter. It's a rule.
Yeah, it's a rule, right? We can rename it to rule as well.
Because I really
So what we call,
rule. Yeah,
what we call
Please.
ACL here is actually the rule.
Yeah.
An ACL group is a collection of rules.
yes. Well, it's not. It's a. See, again, it's. I don't know. Maybe it's a P4 thing, but it's actually. It's a group of rules, and.
Only one will
but,
be hit.
Yeah, but I don't know if you call it an ACL group. The rule group. Is that just a P4 nomenclature thing? Because
not really. This is actually how it is named in the Sonic schema. So it's really aligned with the Sonic schema. It's called ACL group in Sonic as well.
Okay, but they don't have a notion of rules, though, do they?
Yeah, there is an ACL group and ACL rule, and the ACL rule is pointing to a group.
Okay, well, at least use the word rule, because it is a rule. It's different than what's ever been. It's never been defined like that before, so we got to differentiate it to make sure people don't think of it as being a firewall filter, which it's not, right? It would be easy if it were, but it's not.
Okay.
And it's also a so that group, it's a prioritized list of rules, right? So it's not just a list of rules, it's a prioritized list of rules. So just to make that clear.
Yeah, this is new in Sonic for sure. It's not there at the moment.
Okay.
I think you're adding noise in the background, Reshma. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I have connected a different monitor and whatnot. No, I was just agreeing with you that, you know, today it's not there in Sonic and this concept is not there. So if we start to use the word rule, it will be much better. Yeah, in this context.
Yeah, I can rename
guess
it to ACL group. I mean, yeah, ACL rule in my PR.
Yeah, probably.
ACL rule. I see.
Okay.
Let's do it all at once. So yeah, so to summarize, two pull requests that I already put an approval on, they were there for a week. So if anyone wants to make any comments, please do. You have another day. And this one is still under review. It's quite big, so I really am asking for splitting it into two. Yeah, and that's it. There are no more changes to the behavioral model at this point.
Is it okay with you if I go over a few items in the list then, Marian? Or did anyone have questions?
Hey, yeah, I think Mukesh and I, we wanted to bring up another, just a question about the VNet table. So Mukesh, do you want to just go over that the proposed change to the outbound pipeline, what we were thinking, whether it makes sense?
Yeah, so we had some questions about where the VNI is derived from in the pipeline and how it matches with the GNMI approach, I mean GNMI model. And we wanted to see if we can bring in the VNet table also into the SI API. I know we talked about this, Marin. I think Vijay had mailed and you had replied, but we just wanted to go over that if possible in this meeting.
Yeah, you can present that as well.
Okay, I'll just share a screen. Able to see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, so I've just tried to show the current model here and the proposed model below. So the current model, what we have is the dust MAC in the packet. So this is the outbound direction. The dust MAC in the packet is matched in the ENI either table, and it provides an ENI ID, right? And that we look up in the ENI table to get the CPS, PPS flows and all those things. Also, we match it in there's another ENI to VNI table, which gets us the NCAP VNI. In parallel, the ENI also is used to look up the LPM table with the dest IP. And then from there, we get a dest VNet VNI, so we need to see if this overrides the NCAP VNI. So this dest VNet VNI is used to look up the CA to PA mapping, but it also could override the final NCAP VNI that goes out in the packet. But that decision is based on whether there is a Boolean coming out of the CA to PA mapping, which is whether to override this or not. So this is the current pipeline in the dash P4 code. Now, so we think the GNMI is this way. So we were wondering if we should change the P4 also to this way. Right. So the GNMI pipeline seems to be like this part is the same. So we apply the dest MAC, and then we figure out the ENI ID. And from the ENI ID, we actually can derive a VNet ID from the ENI table. And the VNet ID is looked up in a VNet table to get the NCAP VNI. Right, so this is the GNMI model. And at the same time, the ENI ID is also looked up in the LPM table to get a VNet ID. And so this VNet ID could be different from the VNet ID coming from the ENI, because the LPM, in case of VNet peering cases, the LPM could give a different VNet ID. So finally, we need to look up the VNet ID coming from either from the ENI, or if the LPM has overridden the VNet ID, then we use that VNet ID to look up the VNet table and get the NCAP VNI. And then there is also a possibility that, and obviously the VNet ID coming from this is also used to look up the CA to PA mapping. Right, and then finally, there might be a case where the CA to PA mapping can also override the NCAP PNI preferred. So this part, I'm not sure if it's really needed, because the GNMI examples never covered this. So either the NCAP PNI is only coming from the VNet table or from the, yeah. So that's the question that I have for the GNMI itself. But overall, the question is, to us, this looked like a more clear way of representing the GNMI model in the SAI API as well. And it will be a straightforward mapping from GNMI to SAI is what we felt. And this, so we are making some assumptions that the VNet and the VNI are the same. So we are overloading the concept of the VNI, I thought. So
well, VNet and the VNI is actually, it is the same. One thing that I can add to the second diagram is that you have actually two VNets there. One that is determined from ENI, and hence you have two VNIs in the first diagram. The VNet that is looked up from the ENI is the source VNet, or the VNet that this ENI belongs to. And the VNet that you get from the route lookup is the destination VNI, or the destination VNet, or the VNet that this packet is going to be forwarded to. So
yeah. So
yeah, but
so
VNI and VNet is actually the same thing.
Correct. So we could bring another VNet table lookup here just after the VNI required, but at this point, it looked like we only need one lookup in the VNet table. and whichever VNet, I mean, if the LPM overrides the VNet ID, then we can use that VNet ID to look up the VNet table because we're only getting the encap VNI. In future, if we actually need two lookups, then we can actually bring in another VNet lookup in the behavioral P4 code here as well.
No, but you have this lookup. You look up ENI and you get VNet as an attribute of ENI.
Yeah, I think what he meant was in the
VNet
GNMI.
ID.
Right. In the GNMI, there's currently only a single VNI, which is coming from the VNet table, irrespective of the direction. Right?
Yeah, so the VNet ID could come from the ENI or the LPM, right? So the
but those are different VNets ID, again.
It may be the same or maybe different, right? So we don't. It could be the same as well.
I mean the meaning, not really. Like if you're not crossing the VNet boundaries, it's the same VNet. But I'm talking about semantic meaning. ENI VNet is the source VNet where you're going from, and LPM VNet is the destination VNet where you're going to. It may or may not be the same one.
Yeah, that's true. So, but in the model, ultimately, we're just using it to derive the VNI.
Yes.
In the GNMI model, what we are using it is to just look up and get the VNI. So, for now, we are thinking just use the dest VNet ID, wherever that is coming from, and look up the VNet. And so the source VNet lookup is not yet there, but we could bring it later if we want as well.
Yeah, so that's right. That's a good thing that you're pointing out, and I already issued a question or request for clarification to the guys that are defining GNMI for the controller, because to my understanding, by default, source VNI should be used. Overriding VNI to destination VNI is rather an exception, not the rule.
Right. But it's also an optional thing, right? Because the LPM, if it doesn't drive a VNet ID, we are just going to use whatever is the VNet ID coming from ENI, and that'll drive the encap VNI, right? So the LPM VNet ID is an optional thing.
No, it's not, because it's used for CA to PA lookup. It's not an optional. Is it mentioned as optional?
Yeah, I think the way that the proposed
no, I
one
think it depends on the action when it is optional and when it is not optional. So for these VNet direct VNet actions, it will be VNet is required.
And it could be the same as the ENI VNet, or it could be different.
It could be same. It could be. I mean that value can be same, but like Marian mentioned, the semantics are different, right? And I think Mukesh, I will add examples for the one that are missing. But I think overall, it looks like the proposed outbound is a little bit cleaner, right, or clearer.
So Prince, do you want to introduce a concept of a VNet into
I'm thinking that
model?
That is a little bit more straightforward, right?
Okay. So, well, actually, what will effectively change is that we won't have ENI to VNI lookup. What we will have is the VNet table, and then it will be also used. Oh, but let me think. So there's only one VNet table. So not sure how that will work in the P4 model. I will need to think about it, because we have two VNets, as it points out, and we need to have VNI resolved for both of them. So yeah, I'll need to think about
today we only get the VNI from the dest VNet, right? So I think we could use it from the LPM.
Once the
we also have the other concept of.
Go
We could also have the other thing of like we could see, once we have that ACL solution where I was saying like we could copy the contents, right? So we can have as many lookups of the same table as we want in the P4.
Oh yeah.
But with a single STY API. So that way we could still have a source VNet lookup and a dest VNet lookup in P4, but it's populated with a single control plane STY API.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah.
Yeah, so for now, we could do it this way, and then if we want, we can introduce another VNet table lookup in the source also if needed.
Well, we do need it in the source, I believe. I'm still waiting for the answer from the author of the GNMI schema.
Okay.
But right now,
So,
I'm assuming that we will need it.
So that's a question to Prince, right? Where the VNI, basically the VNet ID from the ENI is, are you asking whether the VNet should be looked up from there? Or what is the question? I didn't get it.
What does the ENI to VNI yield? Exactly.
Source VNI or source VNet.
That's the mapping for from a VM to an actual VNI, and that comes from the controller, right? The source VNI.
Yeah. We do have that in the schema. However, we don't have a knob to choose for a CA to PA mapping. Either we are using source VNI or destination VNI.
Yeah, I think Marian, that's the Boolean part, right? The
yes.
Boolean whether that we can clarify. I think the other question is I believe what Mukesh is asking from ENI to VNet, right? Is that what Mukesh is asking?
Yeah, my question is, so there is a VNet ID coming from the ENI.
Yes.
And there is a VNet ID coming from the LPM, right?
Yes.
Now, which VNI should be in the encapped packet? I don't know.
That is what is determined by the Boolean.
Which is missing from the schema, right?
Yeah, which is missing from the schema, which like I mentioned, it will add like we'll have to have some discussions with Michael and the STN team and I think that's what Marian mentioned about the GNMI folks. Yeah. So
I see.
Yeah.
So that was the unclear part. So we were thinking always the one from the LPM will override, but you're saying there is a Boolean coming from mapping which will decide whether to use the VNI from the ENI,
yes,
or the source VNet or the desk VNet.
Yes, and how that is determined is what is the gap in the current schema, like whether it is through a Boolean or the CAPM mapping itself will provide the VNI or the source VNI, like which is not clear. So I think that part will be clarified, and I will put some examples.
All we need is the destination VNI, right? And just
the destination VNI is from the LPM. So both VNIs are available here, I think, Reshma. So the only problem is which one to choose.
Right, and it is the same. I mean, sometimes it would be the same, sometimes it would be different, whether based on it is in VNet or inter VNet, right?
Yes.
So it is. We just need the LPM lookup. I feel, we don't.
Yeah, that was my understanding too, Rashma. But I think what they're suggesting is there should be a Boolean in the mapping to decide whether it's the source or the desk VNI. Even if it's different, we might still be sending with the source VNI.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Even in the inter VNet case.
That's
yeah, because look at it from basically from the inbound direction. I believe on the inbound you will be receiving, if the packet comes from a different VNet, you are receiving usually VNI of that VNet, not of yours VNet, but of the other VNet that it originated from.
Yes.
So Prince, in that sense, in that the schema, we are thinking of adding some Boolean in the VNet mapping table, right? Or something similar. Okay.
Yeah, in the CAPM table, yeah.
So we had one more question about the inbound case as well.
So I think Mukesh, before we go, so what is our plan for this? Like, is it? I think it looks like some changes is happening here, right? With the proposed outbound
Yeah, we
model.
can actually change to introduce the VNet table.
Okay.
And make it VNet ID based. Right, and then based on your final confirmation, we can add a source VNet ID lookup, and we can have the Boolean in the mapping, which is already there, but we can just convert it to instead of directly specifying, yeah, we can use that to drive whether the VNet, VNI from the source VNet or the VNI from the dest VNet should be used. But otherwise,
Okay.
we can change it to a VNet ID and a VNet based lookup, as given in the lower part of the picture.
Yeah, and also we'll remove the ENI to VNI table.
Yeah, we'll change that to like kind of the VNet table, as it's shown here.
Hmm.
So yeah, so one
Yeah,
question also
I think
is that
Marian also let Marian also think about it, and yeah, I think
Yeah,
it should be
I
fine.
think
But
I'm okay with that, but I'm almost certain that there is also a source VNet. So you need to take into account that you'll need to do like 2 VNet lookups in the behavioral model.
sure, yeah, we can
Why
add
do
that.
we need the CAPA mapping before the VNet on the top? The VNet table? The ENI to VNI was a bit more clearer, I felt. The current outbound, in the proposed outbound, why do we need the CAPA mapping to happen before the VNet on the top?
It's not before, it's just the same, this thing, right? There's no, there's no sequencing there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just moved the VNet ID, VNet lookup after the LPM, because it can be driven, the VNet ID to look up the VNet table could come either from LPM or from the ENI. Right?
Yeah.
Whereas in the upper top case, the ENI to VNI is always coming from the ENI. But in case we are going to make 2 VNet lookups, then yeah, similar to the ENI to VNI, there will be a VNet lookup also in the bottom, source VNet lookup, and then there will also be a dest VNet lookup based on the LPM's VNet ID.
Yeah. I think in the diagram, the table placement is just shown parallel, but actually it happens later.
So one other thing I wanted to bring up was the VNet also gives the inbound VNI. Right, the same VNI is also used for the inbound case also. In the GNMI model, the source MAC will be used, sorry, for the inbound direction. Okay, I think I've given it wrong here. So in the outbound direction, it's the source MAC that determines the ENI. And the inbound direction, we use the dest MAC to look up the ENI and then get the VNet ID. And the VNet table would provide the VNI for the inbound case. So it's the same VNI, right? Whereas I think in the current P4 model, there is separate VM VNI in the ENI table.
ENI table, yeah. So that also, yeah. I mean, that will also
Basically,
go
it will
away if
merge.
you put that. Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't get that. Can you please repeat?
So
which table are you talking about that has VNI?
So the ENI table here, that has a VM VNI attribute in the current pipeline.
Oh, that's okay. I see. That's the
for
one
the inbound case.
In the inbound case, after we receive the packet and we verify that it is allowed, what we need to do is to encap to the VM's real PA.
Correct. So that VNI is also the same as the VNet VNI is our understanding.
I'm not sure.
It's not guaranteed, Mukesh. Sometimes it will be some reserved VNIs.
No. So, Prince, this is not the packet coming from the this thing, right? Like VM. It's the packet sent to the VM.
Yeah, this is the inbound case.
Right.
So in the inbound case, the packet sent
again,
to the VM.
Yeah,
so we didn't see
consider this symmetrical, right? If a packet comes from host to the DPU with a reserved VNI, so the expectation is that the DPU will send it to the host with also a reserved VNI, not the VNet VNI.
So in the GNMI model, where is this reserved VNI? We didn't see any VNI in the ENI table in the GNMI. Is it in the appliance?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe it still needs to be clarified.
Yeah, I think that list is not true. It is just single VNI.
So there is a single reserved VNI in the appliance, and so why do we have to put that in the ENI table in the P4 pipeline, right? So even in the P4, then it can come from the appliance, right? Why do we need it in the ENI table?
Why do we need it in the ENI table? Because there is, I don't think we have a P4 for appliance, right? P4 model for appliance.
We do have a appliance also in the P4.
Not really. I think it is redundant, especially with the attributes that it has right now. So the appliance actually models all the missing things from the underlay, like the neighbors and stuff. It has to be actually refined in a way. It doesn't really model the appliance. So we can agree on having one VNI for talking between the appliance and the host. That's one way to do, or another way, which it is modeled right now, is that there is really an option to have different VNIs between a host and an appliance. So that on the when the packet comes from the host, you have a table. I forgot its name. Actually, it's a direction lookup table, right? That all the special VNIs tells you to go outbound, but it may be more than one, right? It does not make an assumption that all hosts will send the same VNI. Could be more than one value. So same thing in here. The same assumption is made in the opposite direction when we are sending from appliance to the hosts. We are not making assumption that it will be the same value, although it could be, like it is defined in the schema, but we just didn't make this assumption. We have VNI value towards each host individually. It doesn't really break anything. It's just more granularity on behavioral model level. And that's it. You can make assumption that for now it's just one value.
Okay. So can we confirm this with the VNet team that always the packet going back to the VM would be the reserved VNI kind of thing rather than the actual VNet VNI?
So basically, you want the inbound, the lookup.
Yeah, transmitted VNI.
Yeah.
What is the VNI we transmit when we send the packet in the inbound direction?
Yeah, I will add that as well in the example. Yeah.
Yeah, so that makes sense. So if it is the reserved VNI, then Marian, what you're saying is we'll drive it from the ENI table as a reserved VNI that user will configure.
Yeah, so basically you can imagine a flow where you get the reserved VNI from the controller and you program it in two places, in the direction lookup and for each VNI, for each ENI, sorry.
Yeah, I think because it has implication on the behavioral model change, that VM VNI, whether we retain it or not, right?
So one question is, so from the controller, the VNI is a global thing, right? It's in the appliance table, so it's not specific to any ENI.
It's a VM
so if you
VNI,
have multiple, yeah. So Marian, what's the case you were saying? Like there could be more than one VNIs, right? So, but today
I'm saying behavioral model allows for that. It's not necessarily, yeah. I'm not sure if we would want to stay with that or remove it. Maybe we can generalize it to be like in the controller, just one value. But I don't really see a benefit in that. We can just stay with the assumption that SAI provides like for more flexibility, and that's it. Doesn't have to be one-to-one.
Okay.
It's not really a drawback, if you agree.
The ENI, VM to VNI is always reserved and always special, right? The only VNI that is not reserved is in the other direction to the after that comes after the CA to PA mapping. But from VNI, the ENI, the VNI is always reserved and comes from the controller, is what I thought.
Yeah, so that's the question, I guess. Are we supposed to send with the same reserved VNI back to the VM or the VNet to VNI?
Yeah, so let Prince clarify that maybe for next time.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's all. Vijay, did you have anything else?
No, so I think, yeah, I mean, if this, at least the concept of introducing a VNet table looks okay, we can actually start looking at behavior model related changes.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So is it, I'm just gonna end the meeting, I'll end the call and just share my screen real quick. I did create the items we talked about last time, the P4 issues here at the bottom. If someone wanted to pick up egress port should equal the ingress port. Bud went ahead and created these two. Mukesh picked this one up, and there's this one, remove the ENI ID from the PA validation table keys. So this is where I put these for now. If you'd like to work on them, I put them in the chat window, and I'll stop the recording. Anything else, Marian?
No, that's it.
Okay. Right. Thanks, everybody. Sounds like there's a lot to work on for next time.